I hope you're enjoying your trip. I remember a story of a woodcutter and a monk. A woodcutter used to go to the forest every day and used to cut the logs of wood and sell it to maintain his livelihood and taking care of the family. One day, the monk, watching the woodcutter, and called him, and he said, "Go deep into the forest. Go deep." And so Woodcutter returned home, talked to his wife. The wife told him that, that monk was a great monk. He must have a deeper insight. That is what, the Eastern wisdom has a deeper insight. Every statement, every principle helps us to understand that we are made up of peace. We are not worthy of suffering and still we suffer. Anyhow, so Woodcutter discussed with his wife and he went deeper into the forest. Covering maybe about 10 miles, he found the sandalwood trees. So he cut those trees, and in those days, the sandalwood, and still trees are, sandalwood is very costly. So he cut those trees and he became rich. Few years passed. So it stuck to the mind of a woodcutter. He said, the monk said, go deep into the forest. He never told me to stop. You see that insight. So that insight comes when we do the practice regularly, when you listen and learn, and you reflect. We reflect on the knowledge. That is what, my master used to say. You are seeing him behind me. So he went deep into the forest. Another 5-7 miles he covered in, he found silver mines. He extracted those silver and he sold it. He became richer. Few years have passed. He went again deep into the forest. He found the gold mines. And at last he found the silver mines. He found the diamond mines. So monk realized and he said, that is it. My master used to tell us the story and he said that diamond is our real self. Until we find that real self and realize it, we think, speak and act out of the diamond mind, that diamond, the real self. We will have to pass through a lot of challenges. The message of the Eastern wisdom is clear. You do the practice. You listen and learn. You contemplate and reflect. For a few days the peace is there, but again the mind returns. Mind returns to the old stuff and it causes the worries. Do you ever think in times of the worries, are you worthy of suffering? We miss that contemplation and reflection. And the moment you miss that contemplation and reflection, You lose your awareness. So when we lose that awareness, when there is a lack of awareness, the mind starts working habitually, impulsively, instinctively, animally. And we miss that peace which is already within us. It hides behind that impulsive mind, behind that instinctive mind. Because all animals, animal mind, or you can say animals, they are not interested in knowledge. They don't want to acquire the knowledge. Why? Their mind is already automated with the minimum knowledge to survive. We do have the same animal mind, and we know how to survive with food, sex, security, sleep. So, to have a physical security, to have a food, to have a sleep, and other pleasures, our mind need not to work too much. We already know it. But in order to search the real self, in order to discover that permanent peace and happiness, we have to live at the higher level of awareness. There is no substitute for it, there is no other alternative. So we should ask the question, are we living with the same mind that we were born with since our childhood? No, I acquired the knowledge of I have the skill sets of the driving, I have the skill sets of my profession. We can answer in that way. But question is, this is the information we have given to the intellect, and the intellect realizes those skill sets in the mind, and we are doing it habitually. But question is, what is that question? Question is, did our mind change since our childhood? You will say one answer, no, yes, it has changed a lot. Okay, it has the skill sets, it has earned a lot of wealth, it has a relationship. No, what I'm asking, since our childhood we had the same feeling of reaction, of anxiety, of duality, of conflict. Our mind has not changed. Did we do we experience a sense of emotional freedom? No. We still find, get attached. We have a blame and complain song is continuously moving on in the mind. That is why it's taking a time. You say goodbye to all the conflicts, opposing emotions, and you see what is the result. That is why our master gives too much of emphasis on the impurity of the mind. It must go. It must result into the purity of the mind. The mind returns to the old habit of that emotional dependence, of opposite emotions, of hate and anger, pain in the pleasure. So the mind, when you forget, when you do not have that level of awareness, that emotional dependence returns. Awakening to permanent peace and happiness takes place when there is no emotional dependence. Can we change? Buddha has changed. Jesus has changed. Moses has changed. More than thousands of masters have changed. They have discovered and they are telling us, here are the principles. Do you ever think that you cannot stop without knowing the truth? You cannot stop until you know the ultimate truth. Or you just want to stop in the middle. I told you this 89-year-old woman from New Jersey. She told me I'm 89-year-old. I said, how dare you say that? As you see, it removes the wrong notion. So whether any person's body is 90-year-old or 20-year-old, it is made up of the same carbohydrate, protein, fat, mineral. It is made up of the same matter. Can you say that it is 89-year-old protein? Not possible. So this 90-year-old body simply means an idea, a thought in the body. Body is constantly changing. Anyone can die at the first year or 50 year or 90 year. Death of the body is uncertain. We don't know. Even if that body contains the healthy protein, carbohydrate. So that part of the birth and the death, we don't know. We know a little bit in between the life. So when we know the ultimate truth, we discover we are the real self beyond the cycle of the birth and the death. So once we reach to that state of real self, there is a total peace and calmness. Whenever you experience after meditation or during meditation, when you experience that state of the calmness and the peace, love and the wisdom, it is that state. It is that real self. But then what happens? Once you return, your mind returns outside and it is attracted by the lack of awareness. We move down to the lower level. It is still there. And then the mind starts creating the challenges. We as a human being cannot stop until knowing the ultimate truth. Why? Because our intellect is free. It has a choice. It can change life. The intellect gives us a knowledge. Do you still remember? I am not worthy of suffering. So whenever your mind takes you to the journey of anxiety and stress, do you ever ask your mind to think like this? I'm not worthy of suffering. How dare I'm suffering? And then when you apply the knowledge in the midst of mind attracted by the jealousy, hatred, blame, duality, conflict, you have changed the thought. Thought changes the feeling. It helps you to live in a higher awareness. you find that you are not worthy of suffering. By knowledge and the practice of the Eastern wisdom, we change our mind. We realize that these thoughts of pain and pleasure, hate and the love, jealousy, anger, agitation, blame and complaint, not worth repeating. In the moment you drop all of them through your awareness, through your understanding, we find this mind enters into the state of calmness and peace. Topic today is why we cannot stop until knowing the real self. That is the ultimate. That is the ultimate. So once I realize who am I know 100% that I'm not worthy of suffering. You may have a pain in the knee, but the mind does not cause suffering. You take care of the knee. What is the best one? To be very clear, we should be very clear about the difference between the mind. When at any point of time, in any situation, with any person, in any relationship, you are experiencing impulsive nature, blame and complain, you get frustrated, it is your mind. And whenever you have the challenges outside, your intellect takes over your life with the knowledge and understanding. It is the intellect. That is why our master says, Satasangatve Nisasangatvam. Listening and learning again is the first step. Then repeat listening with a contemplation and reflection is the second point, followed by the practice. Results into dispassion, detachment, emotional freedom. Have you not experienced the moment you have an emotional freedom? In those moments, you are filled with an immense joy, peace, and calmness. And when you have a thought and feeling of emotional dependence, it causes all the problem. Never forget, Satasangatve Nisasangatvam. So, how the mind works? Do you remember the story of a monkey who became a monk? Monkey was sitting on the top of the tree and watching the gardener collecting the bananas. And every time gardener puts the bananas into the basket, monkey used to jump down and used to take all the bananas, jump onto the tree. Now, see, this is the way the mind jumps on different things. You may have a 10 years old grudge against someone and you are meeting today. So your mind triggers those emotions and then you get upset. Unnecessary, it is not required, but still we get upset. So Gardner became crazy. So what he did, the farmer narrowed down the mouth of the basket. Now, a very small entry. And then he started putting the bananas. Monkeys have a limited intellect. We have a free intellect. So the farmer is a human being. He used and he found the way. So now the monkey jumped again onto the basket. He put his hand inside the basket and held almost 5 or 6 bananas. Now you see his entire area increased. It cannot go out of that narrow opening. So he wanted to take his hand out. Not possible. And the farmer thrashed. Same way the nature thrashes us all the time, the moment we lose awareness. So would you say that, are you saying that we have to live conscious? Yes, we have to live consciously until the mind is totally changed. Until the mind does not return to the old habit. So what happens? So once we get a state of dispassion, and then nisasangatve nirmohatvam, that state of a dispassion removes the delusion. What is that delusion? David knocks the door. You welcome with the mental calm in the poise. Knowledge. You live with a higher awareness. Is it so difficult? Yes, the David knocks the door, you open it, and your mind overpowers you. Why you have come? And your mind returns to the old thoughts suddenly. What happens now? In both the cases, you are there. In one case, the intellect is there, and intellect removed the delusion. Oh, David has come. He might have come for asking something, or he might have come to greet me. Intellect, freedom. Mind goes with the old habit, returns with the reaction, blame, and complaint. So in one state, in one case, no delusion. In other case, we are full of delusion. So we are responsible for our stress and suffering. That is why we need that awareness. So dispassion to delusion is gone. Now when the delusion is gone, what happens? What happens to the mind? The mind is pure. What happens to the pure mind? You live your life in joy and the peace and the calmness. Your mind is not dictated, influenced, guided by the old past impression. That is what the living consciously is. So then what happens? In that natural state of the mind, anytime you are in the kitchen, you are in the state of meditation. You are playing with your pets, you are in the state of meditation. You are outside, you are talking to someone, no grudge against anyone. Why? The intellect is active. It says, I have to evolve. That is the difference between the mind and the intellect. The mind chooses by its habit, instinct, wrong notions, and ideas what it has experienced before in the past. The intellect makes a right choice. Intellect says, let me choose the best. Mind enters and says, choose what brings me the pleasure and reject what brings pain. So the mind is guided by the attachment and detachment and delusion. The intellect is guided by the knowledge. Dispassion, freedom from the delusion, emotional dependence. Pain and the pleasure depend on emotional dependence. That object of happiness, pain are in the world, not inside. Just think, ask your mind, you have seen a person, why you become crazy? Does that person makes you crazy, or your feeling and the thought coming from the past? Okay, coming from the past. Is it necessary to react and blame and complain? Or to have a pain? No. Why I'm doing? I lose my awareness. Mind takes over me. This is what is happening in our day to day life. Since our childhood, those attributes or attitude of the mind with the pain and pleasure, likes and dislikes, reaction and blame, they are continuing. Mind must undergo a total transformation, and that is why we are doing these practices, listening and learning. So, our masters are helping us to understand that days, weeks, months, and years we are living our life in blame, complaint, reaction, sorry, dependence, conflict, confusion. Choice is already there in my head, in my intellect. But I get carried away by the mind and emotional dependence. I get carried away by the attachment and detachment. Anytime I can awaken to that choice and can say goodbye to unpredictable mind. When we recognize the deeper attitude of the mind, one day a person become a friend and the second day foe. One day it is honey and the other day is money is dear to me. One day the person is soulmate, the next day it is soulmate. No, others are responsible. No, we are not a student of sociology. We are a student of self discovery. So we are asking mind why you create such opposite feeling. First, stop this. And that comes by listening, learning, contemplation, reflection, practice without fail. So, what happens to you now? Now, the mind is not inviting those unwelcome thoughts. So, you start living in a higher level of awareness, and that helps us. There is another way to understand the mind since our childhood. You are a mother, so you can easily understand. Look at those animals. Their babies are born, and within few minutes they stand up, they search the breast of a mother, and they suck the milk. Their mind is so much intelligently. Information is given by the nature. What about us? For the human being, the mother approaches the babies, gives them the milk. See the difference between the two. So it appears as if animals are more stronger or independent. No. We are, by nature, we are taught, we are educated to make an effort for everything that we want in our life. So mother feeds the milk, and at last, after a few months, we recognize. We make an effort by crying, and mother feeds us the milk. But that very effort helps me to recognize the power of intellect and the power of effort and the power of knowledge. which is absent in all the animals. Otherwise, they will put us in the case. So that intellect, which has a free choice, which can choose, which can reject, and which can make a right choice to evolve. Faculty. We have a faculty of discernment. Discernment means we have a faculty to separate. What to separate? Separate attachment and detachment from the dispassion. Take the same example. The David knocks the door. You meet. You welcome him. You meet him with a peace, poise, calmness. Or you can meet him with a reaction, blame, and complaint. We have a choice. Animal mind do not have a choice. Even you are overwhelmed with the emotion, you say to the welcome, you still can make a choice. David, calm down. You want a cup of tea? Come. You hold back. When you hold back, you are changing the mind. I've been talking about this. Cow cannot eat flesh. They are limited. The tiger cannot eat graze grass. They are limited. We don't have any limitation. The intellect is there. We just become aware. We make a choice. Hold on. No more anxiety, no more duality, even if the person is in front of me. I'm not worthy of suffering. You start thinking like this and see what happens. But what has happened to the entire humanity that because of expectations, I told you, since our childhood, the mom approaches the baby for the milk, for changing their clothes. So there is an effort. And in that process of an effort, when we make an effort, we learn, we raise our self awareness. But there is another problem that comes, expectations. So the mind learns that I want. So even babies, they start crying, and we know, mother knows why they are crying. They either the bed is wet or they want milk. So this mind has also learned, I want, I want, I want, I want, I want, I want. It sings all the time, I want, I want, I want, I want. There is no problem. There is no problem when I say I want for my physical survival the food, the clothes, the house, professional survival, the car, etc., etc. It's okay. Everything is okay for physical survival. But this mind became crazy. It has started wanting peace and happiness from others, from the situation outside, from the people outside, from the relations outside, which is not possible. And that is the cause of all the problem. That is why the mind says, I'm not changing. So every time, anytime, every time and any time, when you recognize the mind is becoming crazy, start breathing deep, silent, and slow. And check that you have raised your level of awareness with the breath. You chant few times mentally, Shanto Ham the peace. Again, check and experience, are you in peace and happiness? Then mentally tell the mind, I'm not going to I'm not being carried away by you, mind. I have taken over you by the knowledge, by awareness, by peace and calmness. I'm not worthy of suffering. So you see that, that is a great delusion that peace lies outside, happiness lies outside. Or you can say the stress and suffering lies outside. It is experienced in the mind with reference to a person outside. So when that reference is gone, the stress is gone. I want. Yes, we must want. We should want things for physical survival. But the moment you start asking anything for the psychological survival, the emotional dependence takes over the mind. And then only we are frustrated, then only we fall into delusion, then only we suffer, then only we become anxious, then only we start blaming and complaining. Psychological survival. Look at this guy who has come. He has insulted me last time. So why your mind is thinking like this? Because of lack of awareness, because the mind has a habit of repeating the same thing since our childhood. So who can take over your intellect? That is what happens. So here our master says that our intellect, we cannot live in conflict and delusion forever. So what is the way? Simple, because we cannot live without knowing the ultimate, the real self. That is why we are caught in the web of delusion by the mind. Because the mind still says somewhere deep inside, I didn't get it, I didn't get it, I didn't get it. What is the way? Constant practice without fail, listening and learning, checking that am I worthy of suffering or not, and asking declaring by the intellect I am not worthy of suffering. Come on. No person, no event, no situation outside can ever be responsible for my stress and suffering. So, what happens? What is the way that gradually, progressively, we are removing the impurities of the mind so that your level of self awareness goes up? You start living a life of calmness and peace and poise at your personal and professional level. Sometime, yes, sometime the mind will go back to the old routine, but you return. Another challenge is our emotional dependence. So we will be learning how to move from the emotional dependence to the emotional freedom. So once we sense the emotional freedom, then what is going to happen? I will speak one principle. Your mind will naturally contemplate and reflect, and it will move to the higher state of meditation. Naturally, without any practice, because of the knowledge. That is what is known as the self inquiry. Until then, what happens to the mind? Until that level of purity, that level of self awareness, that commitment to be in the peace and happiness, then that commitment that I'm not worthy of suffering. Until then, what happens to the mind? This mind starts projecting peace and happiness in the world outside, and the problem begins. It happens unconsciously, habitually, impulsively. Oh, David should have been right. He should have been free from his problem. I should be happy if he leaves all the bad habits. Now, see, these thoughts pertains to him. If he changes his lifestyle, are you sure you will be happy? You will not be unhappy on account of other stuff? If you say yes, it means that happiness is located with the David. But that is not true. Happiness is not there. Happiness is already within you. So why not you make an effort with the state of happiness and peace to change him with detachment? If he changes, good for him. If he doesn't change, good for him. So in both the cases, you are in peace and happiness. Are you getting it? When the mind lives in attachment, emotional dependence, and delusion, by default, it projects peace and happiness in the world outside. On a person, on an event, on a thing. Then what happens? Peace and happiness is not outside. So we are bound to be frustrated. So unless this mind gets rid of I want peace, happiness, love, truth, wisdom from the world outside, I must get rid of this thought, associated feeling. Ask yourself, but why the mind is seeking like this? Mind is seeking peace and happiness because it keeps the state of unhappiness, insecurity, dissatisfaction inside. So that is an impression in the mind, a state of insecurity and unhappiness is there inside. What is the reference point? For example, again the David. So what happens? Unhappiness is inside. You're seeking there emotional dependence, then you get upset. Is there any reason to get upset? Who will find out? Intellect. Can the mind will find out? No. Mind will increase the seeking, keeping the insecurity, the fear, the unhappiness inside. That is why you see that immense wealth, still unhappy. Bill Gates, richest guy, he made a statement that I lived my loveless life for 27. Why you lived your loveless life for 27 years? Because I'm seeking happiness from her. Go back and understand, remind yourself detachment or dispassion or emotional freedom and no delusion. So, when the mind lives in that state of freedom from the delusion and dispassion, our intellect recognizes what it recognizes, that peace, happiness cannot be found in any object, in any situation, in any time in the world outside. It is within me. Neither any person can cause suffering, nor it can cause peace and happiness with me. We are 100% clear. Will you suffer when you are clear? We find a state of calm in the poise. Then my mind says, I want to be happy with myself. I want to find out the happiness within me, the peace within me. It takes about a week only in that state. It's a natural turning of the mind to the Eastern wisdom. We realize we continue working for physical needs, for the food, shelter, clothes, and professional needs. It is the same like animal kingdom and plant kingdom. Animals do not have a conflict, so we also do not have. So once the basic needs are already fulfilled for both of us, the mind settles into the calmness. Now the intellect starts thinking again. And it follows the principles of Eastern wisdom. And then it works on how the peace and happiness are independent of anything outside. For that, you don't leave the practice, you continue to do the practice, you continue to listen and learn. So once we have a glimpse of the peace and the happiness within, we experience the sense of completeness, the way the tiger finds a sense of completeness, the way the cows find the sense of completeness, the way the mosquito and the ant, they do find the sense of incompleteness. Can you imagine that a mosquito looking at the elephant says that, I should become like an elephant, then only I'll have a sense of completeness? Every living species finds the completeness in themselves. Only we are left. When you look at some beautiful women, oh, no, she is more beautiful. You see the Bill Gates, oh, he is richer than me, I'm poor. We always have a sense of comparison. Comparison breeds the conflict, conflict leads to the confusion, confusion leads to the attachment and detachment. Attachment and detachment results into delusion. Delusion leads to ignorance, and ignorance leads to suffering. We can make a choice. By learning and listening and doing the practice, we can change the mind. We can ask the mind. We can start working on the mind. Continue listening and learning. and we remove the insecurity, a sense of dissatisfaction, a sense of incompleteness, we throw it out from our system. So this mind awakens to the highest. Darkness, delusion, ignorance, egoism, selfishness, sickness, disease, adversity, suffering, sorrow, conflict, lust, pride, blame, complaint, envy, anger, cruelty, uh, violence, sensuality, duality, attachment, they are all known as the impurities in the mind. Do you remember Manev Manohi Dividham Proktam Shuddham Cha Shuddhamev Cha? Mind is of two kinds, impure and pure. Ashuddham Cha Kama Sankalpam Shuddham Kama Vivarjitam. Impure mind is made up of a constant I want peace and happiness outside, caused by the projection. Two factors in impurity, I have already explained all the factors. So impure mind likes, dislikes, attachment, so that must go, my friend. And the pure mind. So if we talk about the purity of the mind, lightness, wisdom, discernment, happiness, cleanliness, health, strength, mental brilliance, intelligence, vigor, name, they are all the purity of the mind, maintaining the calm and poise in all the situation without getting affected. So you see that when we follow simple, so you can check how many times you get upset, anxious, reactive, every day. You maintain your awareness and yardstick. What is the tagline to check it? Vidya dadati vinayam. Vidya, knowledge, gives me the humility, receptivity, capacity to endure the challenges in my day to day life. I'm not getting carried away by the mind. So that is going to check your progress, your level of awareness all the time. Vidya dadati vinayam, vinayam dadati patratam. That humility, receptivity gives us the inner qualification. What is that inner qualification? Now, this mind is not carried away, influenced, or dictated by any situation, thing, person outside in the world. I was talking last week and I was asking that when you approach to the swimming pool, does the water force you to drown or sink? No. Water has nothing to do with you. You make a choice. You jump into the swimming pool and come out of it. Does the hot plate in the kitchen attracts you to put your fingers there? No. So when we forget ourselves, we put our hands into the hot plate. I mean to say, blame, complaint, duality, conflict, attachment, delusion, the problem starts. So vidya dadati vinayam, vinayam dadati patratam. Remember this few words: knowledge, humility. So humility includes into receptivity, capacity, then that humility to inner qualification. And inner qualification results into vinayam dadati patra patratvad dhanamapanoti. We get the inner treasure. With those inner qualification that cannot be reversed, and you find the inner poise and the calmness. And once we start thinking, speaking, and acting with that state, with that knowledge, with that wisdom, we live a righteous life, and one day awakening takes place. So, in today's talk, if I summarize, you have to ask again and again. As a human being, I should not stop. I should not afford without knowing the real self, without knowing who am I, without knowing the exact nature of the real self. I must be immersed and absorbed into the permanent peace and happiness, love and wisdom. The intellect should become instantly active the moment the mind says you are suffering. Let the intellect ask you, am I worthy of suffering? And you will find out the mind will say no. No outer situation, person, condition, time, location is responsible for our sorrow and suffering. There is no way. Not possible. I gave an example. Standing before the swimming pool, or maybe you are walking on the, yeah, you are already doing a morning and evening walk. Does the earth say you fall down? Or I make a error, I make a mistake, and then I fell down? Same example. Anyone comes to your house, knocks the door, your relations, your son. Does that person knocks the door that says that, come on, fight with me? My mind is overwhelmed with a past impression, projection, delusion is there. That's why I fight. That's why I react. Think. You have to just become aware. Is any guy in the world outside says to us, hate us, react to us, fight with me? And the answer we know, it says no, big no. Then why I'm doing it? Because mind is carried away. I have already given you 5, 6 reasons. Mind lives in ignorance. We can tame this mind by any intellect. Where is intellect? Intellect is just a knowledge. What is knowledge? Knowledge is an awareness. Are you aware of yourself? You'll find. Asato ma satgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorama amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.